What if I told you that appearing foolish could be your greatest strength, that hiding your intelligence might actually give you more power, more peace, and more control than showing it ever could?
This isn't just philosophy, it's a strategy used by some of history's greatest minds, from Socrates to Schopenhauer. Stay with me, because the final truth I reveal might completely change the way you see success, power, and yourself. Imagine walking into a room where everyone's trying to prove how smart, successful, or important they are. Every conversation feels like a competition. People toss around fancy words, talk about their achievements, and try to show they're at the top of the social ladder. But then someone stands out, not because they're louder or flashier, but because they don't play that game. They're calm. They don't rush to impress anyone. In fact, they almost seem like they don't care if people think they're smart or not. Sometimes they even let others think they're not that sharp. At first, this feels weird, right? Why would someone choose to seem less intelligent, especially in a world that rewards confidence and success? But if you look closer, some of the smartest people in history have done exactly that. They knew something most people don't. Sometimes pretending to be the fool is actually one of the smartest things you can do. Today, we're going to dive into this idea, how playing the fool can protect you, help you understand people better, and even give you a hidden kind of power. And by the end, you'll see why a philosopher like Schopenhauer believed that truly wise people don't always look wise. In fact, that might be the secret to their strength. Schopenhauer didn't have a rosy view of human nature. He believed that most people are driven by ego, by a constant need to look good, feel important, and outshine others. To him, society was basically a stage where everyone's performing, trying to win status and approval. And in that world, the person who tries too hard to impress often becomes a target. Schopenhauer argued that humans are wired for competition, but this relentless pursuit of superiority is ultimately self-defeating. When someone strives excessively to prove their worth, they inadvertently invite criticism, envy, or resistance from others. People instinctively push back against overt displays of dominance or intelligence, perceiving them as threats to their own standing. This dynamic creates a paradox. The harder you try to gain admiration, the more likely you are to attract disdain. Instead of earning respect, the overly eager individual often ends up alienating those around them. Think about it. When someone walks into a room acting like they're the smartest or most powerful person there, what happens? People push back. They feel threatened. They start picking that person apart, looking for flaws, waiting for them to mess up. It's almost like the more you try to stand out, the more pressure and resistance you attract. But now, picture the person who doesn't compete, the one who seems harmless, maybe even a little clueless. No one sees them as a threat. People let their guard down around them. They might even be underestimated. But here's the twist. In that quiet, unnoticed space, they're actually watching, learning, and waiting for the right moment. That's where the real power lies. Schopenhauer believed that hiding your intelligence was a rare and powerful skill. In a world full of noise and ego, the wise person doesn't try to outshine anyone. They observe, they listen, they let others reveal who they really are, while they stay under the radar, collecting insights and avoiding unnecessary drama. Look at someone like Socrates. He was incredibly wise, but he always said, "I know nothing." Why? Because when he acted like he didn't know the answers, other people opened up. They shared their beliefs, their logic, and Socrates would gently guide them to deeper truths using their own words. He didn't need to show off. His power came from humility. Then there's Sun Tzu, the ancient military strategist. He taught that deception is key in warfare. Look weak when you're strong, and strong when you're weak. If people don't know what you're capable of, you keep the upper hand. That same idea applies in everyday life. When others underestimate you, you get the advantage of surprise. So why does all this work so well? It comes down to basic human psychology. Most people want attention, they want praise, they want to be seen. But when someone doesn't chase that spotlight, it throws people off. They stop viewing that person as competition. That creates space to move, to plan, to act without resistance. Humans are wired to focus on what's loud and obvious, often overlooking the subtle and unassuming. By stepping back, you become invisible in a way that disarms others, making them less likely to guard against you or perceive you as a threat. Imagine two co-workers both going for the same promotion. One of them is constantly talking about how great they are, always trying to impress the boss. The other just quietly gets their work done. No bragging, no need for attention. At first, the loud one gets noticed, but over time, they also attract criticism and scrutiny. People start picking apart their flaws or growing tired of their self-promotion. Meanwhile, the quiet one builds trust, avoids drama, and cultivates genuine relationship. When the opportunity comes, they make their move. And because no one saw it coming, it looks effortless. This approach not only shields you from unnecessary conflict, but also allows your actions to speak louder than words ever could. This idea isn't about tricking people or being sneaky in a bad way. It's really about being smart. It's about knowing when to show your strengths and when it's better to stay quiet and let others think you're not a threat. It's about being patient, paying attention, and thinking a few steps ahead. But there's more to this than just strategy. There's something deeply freeing about not feeling the need to prove yourself all the time. When you stop worrying about what people think of you, you escape that constant pressure to be seen, admired, or praised. And what do you get in return? Peace of mind. You stop feeling like you're in a race to outdo everyone. You no longer waste energy on silly competitions that don't really matter. Think back to moments in your life when you did feel like you had something to prove. Maybe it was during a heated debate or in a group where you wanted to sound smart. Maybe it was at work where you pushed yourself to stand out and get noticed. Now ask yourself how much of that effort really paid off, how much of it truly made you feel good inside. Philosopher Schopenhauer believed that a lot of our unhappiness comes from caring too much about what others think. The more we chase approval, the more we get trapped by it. But when we finally let go of that need to be admired, something amazing happens. We feel free. This liberation isn't just physical, it's mental and emotional. We stop being prisoners to societal expectations and start living authentically, no longer weighed down by the constant pressure to prove ourselves. And that's the deeper truth behind this idea of playing the fool. It's not just about getting ahead in social situations, it's about mastering your own mindset. It's about gaining real freedom, not just from others, but from your own ego. By detaching yourself from the need for validation, you begin to see life through clearer eyes. You realize how much energy you've wasted worrying about other people's opinions, and suddenly you have space to focus on what truly matters: growth, understanding, and inner peace. Here's the strange thing about people. The ones who try the hardest to look smart often come off as insecure. The ones who desperately want recognition tend to push people away. Their hunger for validation can make them appear needy or untrustworthy, which ironically undermines their goal. But the people who are okay with being underestimated, they're usually the ones with real strength. These individuals understand that perception isn't everything. They know their value doesn't depend on external applause, because real intelligence doesn't have to shout, real confidence doesn't beg for attention, and true power doesn't need to show off. Instead, these qualities shine quietly, effortlessly, like a steady flame that doesn't flicker under the winds of judgment or criticism. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. He believed that a lot of human interaction is just ego, people arguing, competing, trying to win, not because they're seeking truth, but because they want to feel right. But in the big picture, being right doesn't always matter. What matters is understanding how people work, how they think, what they need, what drives them. That kind of understanding gives you far more influence than just winning a debate. Picture two people having a conversation. One is trying hard to prove how smart they are. They interrupt, correct others, and make it clear they know a lot. The other person mostly listens, they ask questions, they stay calm, and let the first person talk. On the surface, it might look like the first person is winning, but underneath, the second person is quietly learning everything they need to know: how the other person thinks, what their weaknesses are, and what makes them tick. So, who really has the power here? The one who holds back, the one who plays the fool, often ends up with the upper hand, while everyone else wastes energy trying to stand out. They're learning, thinking, and waiting for the right moment. And in the long run, knowledge is power. But again, this goes even deeper than just getting ahead. It's about finding peace within yourself. When you stop living for other people's approval, when you don't feel the urge to prove your worth, you step into a kind of freedom most people never experience. Schopenhauer believed that so much of our stress comes from chasing status and validation. We worry that if people don't notice us, we don't matter. But that's just a trick our minds play on us, a projection of our insecurities onto the world around us. The more we rely on outside praise, the more we surrender control over our own happiness, handing the reins of our self-worth to others. And paradoxically, the more we try to prove how smart or capable we are, the more we reveal our underlying doubts and fears of inadequacy. That's why some of the wisest people in history didn't care about looking impressive. They understood that appearances often distract from deeper truths. They didn't chase fame, admiration, or societal approval. They chased understanding, knowledge, and authenticity. They weren't trying to stand out in a crowd. They were too busy observing, learning, and growing. These individuals realized something profound. In a noisy, ego-driven world, sometimes the smartest move is to stay quiet, blend into the background, and let others underestimate you. By doing so, they not only avoided unnecessary conflict, but also gained clarity, freedom, and an unshakable sense of inner peace. Take Diogenes, the ancient Greek philosopher. He lived in a barrel, rejected wealth, and made fun of social rule. Most people thought he was crazy, but his wisdom was undeniable. One day, Alexander the Great, the most powerful man on earth, came to visit him and asked if there was anything he could do for him. Diogenes simply said, "Yeah, step out of my sunlight." He didn't care about power or fame. He didn't need anything. And now, all these centuries later, we still remember him, not as a fool, but as someone who saw through the illusions of society. There's something really powerful about learning to let go. When you stop trying so hard to prove yourself, when you stop chasing praise or recognition, you start to become untouchable. Insults don't get under your skin. Criticism doesn't shake you. And people who once tried to challenge you, they realize you're not playing that game anymore. But does that mean you should always pretend to be clueless? Not exactly. The real skill is knowing when to show your strengths and when to hold them back. That's where true wisdom comes in. Sure, there are moments where you need to speak up, maybe to lead, to teach, or to stand your ground. But most of the time, the smarter move is to be patient, to watch, to hold back. Sun Tzu, the famous ancient strategist, said that all warfare is based on deception. The biggest wins don't come from brute force, they come from smart moves. And when it comes to social situations, it's kind of the same. Sometimes the best way to hold power is to make people think you don't have any at all. This approach isn't about hiding who you truly are. It's about choosing when and how to reveal your strengths strategically. Now, some people might say, isn't that manipulative? Isn't playing the fool kind of fake? But here's the thing, almost everyone is playing a role in some way. We all wear masks. We all try to show up as the version of ourselves we think people will like best. So this isn't about lying or tricking people. It's about stepping outside of that whole game. It's about freeing yourself from always needing to be the smartest, the most admired, or the most impressive. By letting go of the pressure to constantly prove yourself, you gain something far more valuable: authenticity and peace of mind. You stop being a character in someone else's story and start living as the author of your own. Think about people you know. You probably know someone who needs to be seen as the smartest in the room, always talking, always correcting, always showing off. And then there's the person who keeps to themselves, listens more than they speak, and doesn't need the spotlight. Who do you really respect more? Who do you trust more? It's not always the loudest voice that holds the most weight. It's often the quiet one, the person who seems like they're not paying attention. They might actually be the one seeing things the most clearly. And that brings us to something even deeper, something that could totally change the way you think about success, power, and what it means to be truly free. Because playing the fool isn't just a clever trick to use in social setting. It's a path to something way more meaningful. It's a way to tap into a deeper kind of wisdom that not many people ever really find. See, the real value of this mindset goes beyond just winning arguments or avoiding conflict. It's about letting go of the illusion that you need to prove anything to anyone. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said that true wisdom isn't about showing off how much you know. It's about understanding life on a deeper level and freeing yourself from the things that trap most people. And one of the biggest traps, the belief that you need to constantly prove your intelligence or your worth to be respected. But what if it's actually the opposite? What if real strength comes from knowing who you are so well that you don't have to prove anything at all? When you embrace being underestimated, when you stop trying to impress, you start to see the world differently. You stop wasting energy on arguments that don't matter. You don't feel the urge to jump in and correct people just to be right. You become the quiet one in a noisy world. And in that stillness, you start to understand things that others miss. Most people live their lives trying to win, trying to stand out, to be praised, to feel important. But all that effort often comes from a deep fear, the fear of not being enough. So they work harder to be seen, to be admired, to be validated. But what if you didn't need any of that? What if you could live without being tied to what others think of you? What if you could talk to people, succeed in life and grow in your own way without constantly trying to prove you're worthy? Imagine the freedom of existing solely for yourself, not for the applause or validation of others. That's when this mindset stops being just a strategy. It becomes a kind of mastery, not just over how you interact with others, but over your own mind. Because once you stop caring about how smart you look, you let go of one of the heaviest burdens we carry, the need for approval. This shift changes everything. You begin to see interactions as opportunities to learn, not stages to perform on. Now, this doesn't mean you stop learning or striving for truth. It doesn't mean you give up on growth or goals. It just means that you no longer depend on recognition from others to feel good about yourself. You pursue wisdom for you, not to be seen as wise, but because it actually makes your life better. By focusing inward, you unlock a deeper sense of purpose and clarity, unshackled from the noise of external expectation. Think about the wisest people in history, the true deep thinkers. They weren't the ones yelling to be heard or constantly trying to prove how smart they were. They were the quiet one, the observers, the ones who really listened and paid attention. Their intelligence didn't need to be shouted, it showed through their calm presence. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, summed it up perfectly. He who knows does not speak, he who speaks does not know. That's the strange truth about wisdom. The people who really get it don't feel the need to broadcast it. The ones who are truly strong don't go around showing off their strength, and the ones who are really free, they don't ask for permission to be themselves. So, how does this actually apply to your life? It all comes down to one word: detachment. When you stop trying to control how others see you, when you let go of the need to be seen as smart, capable, impressive, you suddenly become free, really free. Insults don't hit as hard. Criticism doesn't bother you. Even praise, it doesn't mean everything anymore. You're no longer dancing to the tune of what society expects. Now, this isn't some easy switch to flip. It takes real self-awareness. It means learning to step back from your ego, to resist the urge to jump into arguments or correct someone just to prove a point. But once you start to let that go, something amazing happens. You stop chasing approval and instead you find peace. Think about all the arguments or stress you've dealt with lately. How many of them were really about needing to be right, or wanting someone to see your point of view, or trying to feel respected or acknowledged? Now imagine letting go of all of that. What would that feel like? There's a great story about a Zen master. One day, a man in the crowd started yelling at him, trying to get under his skin. The master didn't react. Instead, he smiled and said, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, who does it belong to?" The man said, "Well, I guess it still belongs to the person who offered it." The master nodded and replied, "Then I do not accept your insult." That's real power, not taking the bait, not getting pulled into battles that don't matter, not letting your ego run the show. And this is what playing the fool is really about. Not pretending, not tricking people, but rising above the need to prove anything at all. But here's where it gets even deeper. There's one final, powerful truth that ties everything together. See, the wisest people in history didn't just pretend to play the fool in public, they embraced the fool within themselves. Sounds strange, right? But stay with me. They stopped trying to control everything. They let go, not just of public image, but of the rigid ideas and beliefs in their own minds. They realized that so much of what we stress over, status, reputation, being important, is really just a performance, a big complicated show we all agree to play along with. But once you see it for what it is, you can step out of it and start living on your own term. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that suffering comes from attachment, from constantly wanting control, praise, and validation. But what if you didn't need all that? What if you could just be? That's what people like Diogenes figured out when he gave up all the fancy things and just lived simply. That's what Lao Tzu meant when he said we should be like water, flowing, adapting, going where life takes us. That's what Zen monks embrace when they use paradoxes and humor to break free from serious, rigid thinking. At the end of the day, this isn't about checking out of life or pretending not to care. It's about waking up. It's about seeing the game and choosing not to get caught up in it. And that's what true freedom really looks like. Here's something most people don't realize. The fool, the person who isn't constantly trying to be right or taken seriously, is actually the most free. Think about it. They don't carry the weight of always needing to impress others. They don't stress over looking smart or competent in every situation. Instead, they get to explore new ideas, laugh at life, ask questions without fear, and just be themselves without that constant pressure to conform. In that freedom, there's a kind of wisdom that people who are obsessed with looking smart or having all the answers will probably never find. And that's exactly why so many wise people throughout history chose to live in ways that might have seemed weird, silly, or even absurd to everyone else. They weren't trying to gain approval or recognition from society. They understood something that most people miss. Life isn't about proving yourself or showing off. It's about living it fully, embracing the journey, learning along the way, and letting go of what doesn't really matter. So what does this mean for you? It means that next time you feel that urge to prove something, to show someone how smart or capable you are, pause, take a moment to really ask yourself, who am I actually trying to impress here? Why do I feel like I need their approval so badly? And what would happen if I simply let go of that need to prove anything? It also means that when someone underestimates you, instead of rushing to correct them, just sit back and observe. Watch how their assumptions actually say more about them than they do about you. There's a quiet power in letting people misjudge you without needing to defend or explain yourself. You don't need to fix everything. Sometimes allowing others to misunderstand you can be incredibly freeing. You're no longer bound by their opinions or judgment. And when you feel the itch to jump into an argument or assert your intelligence just to win respect, pause again. Think about this. What if, instead of engaging in conflict, you chose calm? What if, instead of raising your voice, you chose silence? Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to be still. It's easy to get caught up in the drama and noise, but true strength comes from knowing when to step away and let things unfold on their own. Because here's the real truth. The wisest people don't care about looking wise. The most powerful people don't walk around demanding respect. And those who truly understand the world don't waste their energy trying to prove their understanding to others. Here's the twist though. By embracing the fool, by stepping away from the need to appear clever or important, you actually tap into something much greater, something deeper than any praise, recognition, or title could ever offer you. You become someone who moves through life with calm, with understanding, and with real strength that doesn't need to shout or compete. Instead of clinging to external validation, you find peace within yourself, and that inner peace becomes the foundation of true power. So now here's the most important question. Are you ready to let go of the need to constantly prove yourself? Are you willing to stop playing the game of trying to impress others and instead just be you, even if some people don't get it or agree with it? Because if you are, you'll unlock a kind of freedom that most people never find. And that freedom, it's more powerful than any award, compliment, or title. It's a kind of freedom that allows you to live authentically, unshaken by the pressures of the outside world. Thanks for listening.